I'd like to welcome our panelists to the stage. We have Danielle Canty, our Senior Advisor and Director of Technology Policy, Cantrell Dumas, Senior Researcher in Financial Regulation and Policy, and Dr. LaToya Parker, Senior Researcher leading our Economic Policy and Tax Programs work. Great. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Right, everybody.
Good morning.
That was a participatory question. Thank you. So let's start with grounding the audience in who you are and what you're watching right now. In each area of research, talk to us a little bit about 2 to 3 key takeaways or trends that are driving policy right now and what this room needs to understand. If you and you can popcorn and whoever would like to start first, but each of you, please take a moment to introduce yourself, your body of work, and then discuss the trends that you're watching.
Sure. First of all, good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm Dr. LaToya Parker, Director of Tax Policy and Wealth, and also Senior Researcher at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, where my work examines economic policies that include tax policies and how those policies shape the economic realities and future of Black communities.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Cantrell Dumas. I'm a senior researcher at the Joint Center. My work focuses on Black retirement security and financial markets, innovative financial products, or market developments that help shape Black wealth, building Black wealth, and long-term Black financial stability.
And good morning. My name is Danielle Canty, and I'm the Senior Advisor and Director of Technology Policy for the Joint Center. My work touches on everything from broadband access to broadband affordability, privacy, AI, and platform accountability.
Wonderful. You're not busy at all. So LaToya, let's start with you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the top trends that you're watching and research that you're working on?
Sure. That's a great question. In my world, I'm always looking at how we could better Black communities. And so right now, I'm focused on some of the largest tax legislation of our generation, where the wealth is tilted in a direction where it's widening the racial wealth gap, right? And that same legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, is cutting safety net programs and supports for it, where SNAP participation, food assistance, is down participation 4.7 million people right now since July, around this time last year. And while the wealth is tilted in the direction of an overwhelmingly majority of white households. So I want to make sure that we're in the conversations, that the realities of Black communities are in the center of those debates.
I appreciate that. And as you talk about households and the stakes, can you just speak to, there's legislation of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that went into effect July 1st regarding higher education and students. Are you able to speak to that at all? Or, go ahead.
So higher education provisions?
Yes.
So, well, there's plenty of provisions within the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, but some of the things that stand out to me specifically is the Pell Grant. Oftentimes, a lot of young Black students rely on Pell Grant, and that's another program that's being cut significantly. And I think that it's very important to prepare now. As the senator was saying, you know, we're in a moment right now where a lot of the civil rights are being reversed. And, you know, as we're looking into the elections that are coming up, it's important to prepare now and to educate the incoming and the existing policymakers to make sure that we're in the position to fight back, not just react.
I really appreciate that. And just the relationship. We may not always think about taxes except for, when we get around to April 15th, but the relationship between taxes, savings, the ability for Black households to manage both the short-term and long-term pressures is directly correlated. And so I really appreciate the portfolio of your work that you have. Cantrell, can you speak a little bit about what you're working on right now and the trends that you're seeing?
Yes. So the trends I'm seeing is the key word is access. For retirement policy, you're seeing a lot of talks about providing access to employers or to employees who don't have access to state or to employer-sponsored retirement plans. So you see a lot of states having retirement plans, or there's the Savers Match. There's other programs out there providing access to employees, Black employees specifically, who don't have access to employer-sponsored plans. So that's all important. That's great. I think having access is great. However, that's not the issue. The issue is that many Black people do not have the financial security or stability to lend to these programs, right? So even if you do have access to certain programs, you don't have the monetary means, where wages are low, you don't have steady employment, there's no home ownership, there's no inherited money coming from parents. So the question isn't access, is we should focus on whether or not we should provide enough financial stability, financial resources for many Black people to be able to access these programs.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about your recent retirement snapshot that you published?
Yes. So I published a recent retirement snapshot. I think it was published on July 13th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It goes through the numbers of, many Black people don't have enough money to save for retirement, right? And it doesn't start at the retirement age. It starts from the very beginning, your 20s and 30s, when you're working age, right? You don't have enough money saved. You don't have the resources. You don't have higher wages, steady employment. So over time, it just compounds over time and time. And many Black people, unfortunately, don't have rich relatives to lend them money for inheritance or things like that. So over time, by the time you reach retirement age, you don't really have anything for retirement, right? There's less Black people have home ownership, things like that to pass to their children or whoever. So the snapshot really focused on these issues, and it calls out retirement doesn't start at age 65 or whatever. It starts really 21, 23, 22, when you get into the employment sector.
Cantrell, one of the things that I really appreciated about your research is how you outline how the gaps compound upon themselves to lead to a persistent retirement gap. I know you've been doing our monthly labor analysis on Jobs Day. Can you speak a little bit about that and the trends that you're seeing with unemployment? Yeah. So the top line employment numbers you see is that unemployment has been stable, right? 4.3% overall, right? And it's been like that for over a year or two, right? However, when you look at Black unemployment numbers, it has jumped. I think November of 2025, it was like 8.3%, and it's been steady around 7% up until the past 2 months, where now currently it rests at 6.6%. So if that was the main number for unemployment for everyone would be up in arms. We'd be talking about recession, we'd be talking about ways and policy, how we can get the numbers down, and things like that. However, for Black people, you don't really hear too many people arguing about that numbers being too high. So the issue we should think about is, why is Black people, the unemployment rate for Black people much higher than all other races, right? I think for white it's like 3-point-something%, Hispanic is 5-point-something%, and Asian is like 3-something% as well too. So Black unemployment rate is more than twice than the others. So why is that? Why are we not talking about policies and things to where we can bring Black people unemployment rate closer to that 4.3% that's been hovering for the past 2 or 3 years? I appreciate that. And so to me, it sounds like the bottom line is that our unemployment rates are not hitting the headlines? Or is
It's not. It's not. You have certain people who are talking about it, but not enough people are sounding the alarm as to the employment rate for Black people being as high as it is. Now, I must say, though, historically, if you look at, the past 10, 15 years, the unemployment rate for Black people has been double digits, right? And that's, but now, if we look at today's terms, since 2022, it has been going down, right? And for some apparent reason, in November 2025, and you can look at maybe the layoff for federal employees and things like that, but it jumped to 8.5, 8.3%. And during that jump, the unemployment for overall has still been at a stable 4%. So we're affected. Black people are affected more so than anyone else. So we need to talk about policies and things of why is that happening, and what can we do to bring that number down closer to the 4.3% unemployment rate that's been going on the past 2 or 3 years.
And then one of the other things I appreciated is how you disaggregate and identify Black youth unemployment rates as, employers are becoming more selective and some of these entry-level positions decline. We're seeing that persistent and increasing youth unemployment rate as well.
Yeah, so, I guess we read the news, you hear about the job market being steady, and that's fine, but as a Black youth who just recently graduated from high school or seeking for an internship or who graduated from college, it's tough out there, right? Just having a degree is not enough. The youth unemployment for Blacks is like 16 point some percent. It's really high in comparison to, I guess, for other people or races is like 14% or something like that. Don't quote me on the numbers, but I do know that the Black youth unemployment rate is really high at 16%. So to be a recent college graduate, people are not hiring. People are not necessarily taking in recent graduates. And we can go into the policies of there may be some underlying racism there, or there could be other things, but right now, to be a young Black person looking for employment is really tough.
And that just compounds to your point earlier. If you're a year out looking for a job, that's a year that you're not earning wages. That's a year that you're not contributing to your retirement
definitely.
accounts.
And to piggyback that, Monica, as well, that when you don't have that first job or whatever the case may be, you're willing to take anything, right? So that lower your wages as far as like trajectory. So if you compound that over time, by the time you retire, you're behind the 8 ball, if you will.
Yes, I appreciate that. We don't have our senior analyst and workforce here today. She is out on maternity leave, but I do want to encourage you all to also look on our website as it relates to our workforce and labor work as well that intersects into that work. Before we get to you, Danielle, because I have a lot of questions for you, Cantrell, I have one more question. Can you talk a little bit about new financial technologies that exist and that are making headlines right now, and what financial security or risk looks like? I know lots of folks have heard about cryptocurrency and some of these other avenues.
Like I said before, the key word is access, right? So you see a lot of marketing out there for these new financial products or deregulation or anything, market developments, whether it be crypto, stablecoin, earned wage access, whatever the new product may be, is to provide access to people, to provide access to, the American dream, if you will. And the question we should ask is, like I said before, having access is all well and done, but who's truly benefiting from these products, right? Or who's truly benefiting from these products, and who's actually bearing the risk of these products? These are the questions we ask, right? A lot of these products, Black people in general do not have, like I mentioned before, the economic wealth to burden the loss of speculative instruments for cryptocurrency. So I'm not going to go into detail about crypto, whether or not it's good or bad, but we can all agree on that it's highly speculative, right? So if I'm a Black person and I've been told that this is access to wealth or access to build long-term wealth, and I put my money into crypto and it falls volatility, due to the volatility of the product itself, I'm bearing a bigger loss than someone who has the money and the savings to take on this loss. We're not discussing that, right? All you hear is provide access, building wealth. These are tools and things out there to help Black people to achieve the American dream, but no one's really discussing or providing the transparency of these certain risks.
Really appreciate that, Cantrell. Thank you. Danielle, I know you have a lot that you've got on your plate. Talk a little bit about some of the key trends that you're seeing and what you think we need to be considering as we look forward.
Well, I would say that the first one is pretty obvious, that technology is not just some standalone issue as it is right now. As emerging technologies are taking off, technology is taking off, it's being integrated into every area of our lives, from our work, from our employment to our play, and beyond that, also just our public policy is affecting every area of public policy. We even see that within the Joint Center in Cantrell's portfolio and also LaToya's portfolio, that technology is touching on every public policy area, and in that, it's also impacting every area of Black life as well. The second trend, I would say, is more of a fear, I would say, is that we are trading one divide for another. So right now, everyone is very hyper-focused on AI. It's the new shiny tool, and I understand, I get it, it's great. But we still have millions of Black Americans who do not have access to the internet. We still have millions of Black Americans who do not have reliable broadband connections. We have millions of Black Americans who cannot afford a reliable broadband connection. And while we're talking about AI and everyone needs to be AI literate, which I agree, we still need people to be able to get connected and understand how to use the internet in a way that makes sense for them. So I kind of feel, or it's my fear, that we're going to abandon the broadband divide. When I first came into technology, we talked a lot about, the digital divide. It was everywhere. Especially among the pandemic, we saw how important having a connection was. And now it's like we're almost abandoning that issue and going straight into AI. So I would say that the trend to me is that we are abandoning that issue, but also that we need to make sure that we don't, as our community, we don't let that become something that falls by the wayside, because it's very important to our everyday life.
I think that's really important, because just like Cantrell and sort of unemployment compounding, the retirement gap, broadband access or lack thereof is only compounding, the gap within technology. And so as, some of these conversations, many of these conversations are shifting to AI and AI use. You can't use it without access to the internet. So I really appreciate that. Danielle, as you think about technology, to me, and you can feel free to disagree, but it has seemed to move from an industry to infrastructure. It is just a key part of our lives, whether it's school or healthcare or anything else. How do you see that tying in with work and the future of work?
I mean, it's everywhere. Like, even, and I see it more so impacting the workers who are not necessarily, I would say, the most educated when we think about just what's happening at fast food restaurants. I don't know if you guys have heard, but I thought this was very interesting that Burger King now has an AI assistant. Her name is Patty. And yeah, I thought that was cute. But I'm just a little confused as to why do you need an AI assistant in your ear? Also, certain restaurants, I know that McDonald's has a restaurant where it is a completely automated restaurant. Those type of things, again, there's a lot of fears when I think about technology. They concern me. Like, it's becoming the infrastructure of our work. And even beyond just that, we could have a whole panel discussion on the whole AI data center situation, that infrastructure and what that is costing Black communities. We can see what's happening in Memphis with the XAI data center. We can see what's happening across the United States. So I do believe that that technology is now becoming this infrastructure of everyday life, and I'm just interested and fearful a little bit. I'm sorry that I don't have more hope for you guys in this area, but I am a little fearful of how this impacts us going forward and what the next 10 years are going to look like for those type of workers, and even just as Cantrell said, our youth that are coming out of college, because even I went to law school and I see a lot of the law school students. I mean, AI I'm not going to say it's replacing like that entry level legal work, but in some instances it kind of can, and that just very much so worries me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, last week I was trying to order a salad on the screen, and I'm like, I consider myself fairly technologically competent, and I couldn't do it, and I just wanted to order a salad and get out, right? And what does that mean for my mother or my aunt to try to go in and then get in and get out, and then also linking back in and just the intersectionality of it all. Those were former entry-level jobs for kids, where you learn patience, where you learn customer service skills, where you learn organizational skills, where you learn how to work with a team. And so there's a level of skill erosion that happens when technology also replaces some of these entry-level jobs. And quite frankly, skill erosion as, maybe some of us in the room no longer do first drafts and we leave it to Claude or ChatGPT to do a first draft. There is learning that happens in the drafting process. There is learning that happens in the failure process. And when we skip over that, there certainly can be skill erosion while the machine is learning how to do your job.
While you're training it.
While you're training it, right. Right. Now, Danielle, one thing that people may not be as aware of is that technology policy also encompasses media ownership and local journalism. Can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing under media consolidation and some issues from that perspective?
Absolutely. A lot of stations, I know a lot of us here get our information online and social media, but there are plenty of communities, such as the Black community, that get their information from local television. Right now, multiple, I would say, media firms are buying up a lot of the local television stations, and they're essentially, it brings the question of who is telling us what we need to know. Like, is it usually when you have like a local television station, they're telling you the local things that you need to know for your community, the school board meetings, certain elections and things of that sort. But if you have it coming from a top-down headquarters who are now going to, essentially disseminate one message across multiple local stations, that's kind of like is local television doing what it needs to do for their local communities. I don't know if you've seen this clip that has circulated for a few years online, where one media group, I'm not going to name it, but a lot of television stations were caught essentially saying the same exact talking points. Like straight through, and it was like multiple stations. So it just begs the question of who is teaching Black communities what they need to know about their community, and are we being given being given what they want us to know instead of what we need to know?
I appreciate that. And one other or two other points that I just would love for you to lift up for the room. Can you talk a little bit about privacy issues as it relates to technology? I mean, all of us now essentially have at least one camera on us at all times if you carry one phone. If you're like me, I have two phones, and many of you in the room may, or your laptop or your home ring security, situation or anything like that. Talk a little bit about what data privacy is looking like right now, what issues you have on your radar.
Well, a lot of cause for concern. Again, one privacy issue is just, I know that it's been all over social media, so I'll speak to that, the flock cameras everywhere. Let's talk about just privacy among, public service. Police officers have body-worn cameras. What happens when a government official, such as a police officer, walks into a Fourth Amendment protected space? like, where's that information going? Do they have the protocols that they need to, like, are they turning off their camera when they go into these spaces, such as like your house? You're not supposed to be able to record that. That's your private space. You don't have to let them in. Also just even the privacy of what you type in. Let's take it back to chatbots. What you type into a chatbot. I don't suggest anybody type in something you don't want it to know. There is no privacy law for your chats. You essentially, if the government needed to get something from OpenAI, they can get it. So I would say that right now we're going towards this, what it feels like, again, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but this surveillance state where you are continuously being watched. And I think that our privacy laws are not, they're not sufficient for where we are right now as a society, and that is one of the things that I would love Congress to, push. I know right now we have the whole kids privacy bill, which is a start, but we need a singular federal privacy regulation in the United States. Not saying to go as far as other countries, but we need some type of guardrails.
I appreciate that. And as a people who are already overly surveilled, I think that the issue around data and privacy is so important, and so important for us to keep to keep track of. One of the things that's striking me across all three of your policy areas is that often the use case for innovation is replacing that of having good policy in place and good guardrails in place that protect communities. And the thing I appreciate about each of your bodies of work is that you are focused on how we can leverage advances while also ensuring that our communities and our rights are protected at the same time. Before we end the panel, can you just tell us, one area where you're looking ahead? We have a room full of policy advocates, funders, industry leaders. What questions should folks in this room be thinking about? What's missing from the conversation to ensure that we have positive policy change in America in your issue area? Go ahead, LaToya.
Sure, I'll start. Well, I think that it's very important to close the racial wealth gap. And as we think about that, I work from a framework of wealth as infrastructure. And you brought that up earlier. That's very important because oftentimes folks think of it as aspirational or luxury. But we should think about Black wealth as a way to absorb shocks, right? That could be a job loss at a time like this. That could be unexpected expenses or medical crisis. So that's very important as we think about tax policy. Tax policy is wealth policy.
So you can say that one more time for the back of the room.
Tax policy is wealth policy. Black wealth as infrastructure. It's necessary.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Cantrell.
Yeah, so it's that word again, access, right? So I think we need to stop measuring access, but measure the actual outcome. A lot of these products, these innovative products, are moving much faster than the actual policy, right? It's moving at a light speed. And so instead of measuring, oh, this is providing access, we should look at the outcome of these particular innovative products, right? So I'll give you two examples, right? Payday loans. When payday loan first came out, I'm sure they didn't have the intention of being predatory, right? It was one of the things where if you need money fast, you need a credit, you can go to a payday lender and access this loan. The problem was that people kept using it over and over again, with high interest rates and things like that, they go into debt and became predatory, right? Subprime mortgage. Subprime mortgage provided homeownership to a lot of Black people, right? With those low rates and things like that. But because of its interest rate and how it was structured, it caused a lot of foreclosure, which therefore a lot of Black people lost their wealth in a sense, right? So we should measure the actual outcome of a lot of these innovative products, and instead of just hyping it up and saying this is the next great thing, we should look at the risk, right? If you look at the long-term risk and actually do research on potential risk of these products, we wouldn't be looking at trying to fix the harm it's caused Black people. We can find ways to try to prevent some of these harms. And that way, we can provide policymakers, regulators, some type of say as far as certain guardrails that should be in place when these products come into play.
Appreciate that. Danielle?
And looking ahead, I would say I am focusing on emphasizing how, human capacity should not be replaced by AI. AI is a tool. It's very helpful. I'm sure all of us have used it in one way or another. But with that, critical thinking is as much as important as that tool, if not more. We can't abandon critical thinking in the sense of like, well, the AI can take care of it. You still need to work your brain and, and exercise judgment over, what you do use AI for and the outputs that come out of it and whether or not you should maybe use it for your work or not. When I think about this issue, I also think about we're pushing towards AI literacy, but I think the children need to have basic literacy. They need basic critical thinking skills. They need to be able to look at an AI generated output and understand whether or not, is this correct or not? Does this make sense? So I would say that for me, my mission going forward is to promote critical thinking and to have us understand that AI is a tool. It is not a replacement for any one of us in this room.
I appreciate that. What time do we have here? I just want to see.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock on the dot. Just one closing thought as we go into midterms. Can you speak just one quick moment about mis and disinformation, and if there's anything you want people in this room to know, to share with their neighbors, to share with their communities?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I would say that take a minute to evaluate what you're about to share when you see it on social media. Take a moment to think, is this real? Are there any markers that will indicate that it's not real? Take a moment before you share anything to just think about it and give it a thought. Maybe do additional research, because a lot of the time we're seeing these memes and things go across social media, and a lot of them are just not true. So I would say take a moment, take a beat, and think about the things that we're sharing before we share them.
And in this moment in time, we know that mis and disinformation is being used as a political tool. We know that, Senator Blount Rochester spoke to the emphasis that folks are placing on the vote, the ability to access the vote, the ability to prevent folks from accessing the vote. And so we need to make sure that we're as armed and informed as possible going into that.
Just one thing. In 2016 election, the Russia Internet Agency used social media as a means to infiltrate your mind, to get inside the minds of Black people and tell us not to vote and to boycott the vote, and they don't care about us anyway. Think about what can happen in a 2028 election now with AI. That's why I say take a moment, take a beat to understand what you are about to share, because there are people who have nefarious missions in infiltrating our elections, and they target us in this room more than they target everybody else. They target you in a different type of way. They target you and tell you that you should boycott the vote, while they target another group and tell them which group they should vote for. And that says a lot to me. So I would say, please take a beat. That's my biggest thing that I would tell you to take away from this conversation.
Great. Thank you so much to each of you for sharing your
Thank
bodies
you.
of work, what you're looking ahead at, and what we all need to do to be prepared.